Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Welcome to the next edition of the Vegas Squares podcast. We are sitting in studio, myself and Tony Johnson. Tony, what's going on, brother?
Not too much. I'm excited to finally get a good tutorial here on this AAF. I know we talked about it last week, but it'll be fun to sort of get more of a broad-based, detailed thought on this from Nate, who knows what he's doing.
We're going to be giving the listeners a crash course in Alliance of American Football. As you alluded to, we do have a returning guest, Nate Wahl. You may know him from Big Wall's Big Picks that we had during the college football season, but he's back to give us an insider's information on the Alliance of American Football. Week 1 was met with, I would say, mostly great reviews, and a lot of people looking forward to Week 2, especially us degenerate bettors. Nate, it's great to have you back. How's life been since we last talked during the college football season?
It's been good. Unfortunately, I spent some time doing a little more betting on college basketball and didn't do it nearly as well as I did in football. So that's why I'm back to covering and betting on the AAF, because I seem to have more better luck in football.
Fair enough. All right, before we dive into the AAF, I want to thank the sponsors, obviously, first and foremost, 12-Ounce Sports Radio for putting us on every week. We also have our sponsors, Vegas Puckline Apparel. We also have Eric on the Web Productions and ChaiPoker.com. Again, thank you to all of our sponsors. A big shout-out to all of them for supporting us and doing what they do. All right, Nate, without further ado, let's dive into the Alliance of American Football. My favorite hashtag so far on Twitter the last week has been Join the Alliance. It just feels like a Star Wars hashtag, and I like Star Wars. So, all right, Nate, let's start with the basics. Well, everybody who watched football, I mean, especially my new, what are you, the noob? The AAF noob.
I'm the noob. Yeah, that's me.
He said, my favorite part of the Alliance of American Football was watching Berkovici get his head blown off. And that's just not something you see in the NFL. And with good reason sometimes in the NFL. You have a lot of these guys on big contracts. You got to protect them. But let's just kind of talk about how we know that would never happen in the NFL versus the AAF. And let's talk about a little bit of these different rules that the AAF has that the NFL doesn't necessarily have. A couple of them, I'll tell you the one thing I was most shocked, I guess we'll use that word, was the illegal defense penalty, which I've obviously never seen in the NFL. So why don't we start with the illegal defense, because that's the one I'm most interested in hearing about.
Yeah, so the way it kind of creates with the illegal defense, like you're not able to, like in the NFL, you got guys that you can blitz, as many guys as you want. With the AAF, I believe you can only blitz, I think it's less than 5, and they have to be on one side of the field, so like you can't rush from both sides. So that was one that's very different. There's a couple other rules that I feel like parts of the game that they could have gotten rid of, they could have kept, would have made a huge difference. But I think that's the biggest one, and I think from a safety standpoint, even though I saw a lot of hits in the AAF last week, that I'm like, all right, Roger Goodell would be shitting his pants if he saw those hits on big elite players. It's just a different mindset. It keeps the players a little bit more, intact, keeps quarterbacks more intact and whatnot. So, I don't dislike the rule. I don't love the rule either, but it's a different aspect that as they're taking safety very seriously.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the NFL taking safety, seriously. Guys are still going to get hurt. It's a contact sport. It's football. And like we saw, Berkovici, had no idea, got his doors blown in. But, things are going to happen with that. Tony, positive or negative in your opinion, a situation like that? As a football fan, I mean, think of the NFL. They used to almost monetize these hits. I remember Sean Taylor would just lay people out in the middle of the field, guys like that, and you'd see the YouTube videos, and then all of a sudden that all went away. But when I saw that hit happen, I went on social media, and a lot of guys, were just, thrilled as nuts.
It's been probably the biggest promotional tool they've had so far, I think, from week one. To me, I would guess, based on being a general sports guy and just looking around or whatever, the Bercovici hit has been the one that has been the most talked about. Nobody really cared who won that game per se, and I'm not saying that's a positive or negative, but if you're trying to grow a sport and grow something, and you can get something that gets a lot of eyeballs on and people get excited about, and as you said, this was a commonplace 10, 15, 20 years ago, maybe even less than that. So yeah, I think we've lost a lot of football fans in general. People that were big fans to some of the rule changes through the NFL, and yeah, I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. The fact that these guys are obviously not paid exorbitant amounts of money, the protection level certainly is not going to be there. So yeah, I mean this is definitely, I think, the best rule change, or the best thing that's going on, is the fact that players can kind of play a little bit more free, at least some of the defenders. So yeah, I think we'll see a lot of good stuff going forward.
Yeah, most definitely. I think you hit it on the head with a marketing tool. That's what you want to see. We want to see it's more football, and sometimes more football doesn't always work. You talked about, hey, look, I like the break, and I'm like, hey, look, more football, give me more football. Now we have more football where we have actual contact that it makes it fun a little bit more. But Nate, we talk about the word football and the sport of football. I mean, obviously one of the two main words in there is foot, and it seems like the AAF actually takes the foot a little bit out of this football league.
Yes, so there's no kickoffs and no extra points. So the only kicking opportunities you're going to get is your obviously your punts, and then your field goals. Which, I mean, I'm sorry to say it, but I saw a lot better kicking in the AAF than I did the last 4 weeks of the NFL season playoffs. So, it's kind of, I think it's a good spot for, I saw guys like Young Hoo Koo, Nick Novak, who's Nick Folk. I mean, guys, we've heard of, guys that have, been in the league, and, Young Hoo Koo kind of got booted on his way out in I'm going to say San Diego for the rest of LA. But at the same time, I mean, it's good to see that, they still have kicking, but I mean, with extra points, I mean, you kind of get sick of them, and, you're sick of your teams, costing you a game because of, that they can't make a 30-yard field goal. I think it's good to kind of maybe get rid of the kicking aspect, just because, I mean, it's less people putting holes in their TVs off the balconies just because kicker can't make a kick. So I like the move.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, the having to go for two instead of extra points obviously creates not only odd scores, but it creates score differentials to where, if one team makes a 2-point conversion, the other team misses, it starts to create scores that call for more, what's the word, an aggressive approach, where if you're 4 points down because of two missed 2-point conversions, sometimes field goals won't help you, so that creates the need to go for, fourth down conversions, et cetera, like that. So I think it almost, from a sense of also, the non-kicking aspect of the game, it also creates funky scores that, create, more offense, in my opinion. So we'll see about that. We haven't had it yet, but overtime is obviously, especially after the two championship games this year, overtime. A lot of people cried about Mahomes not getting the ball in overtime, and this, that, and the other. We could spend 3 more podcasts talking about the two overtime games. The overtime in the AAF is a little different. Again, we haven't experienced it yet, but I imagine at some point we will.
Yeah, with overtime, I mean, it's very similar. If you all watch college football, it's very similar to how they do it in college football. Except they start the ball at the opponent's 10-yard line. So it's just a matter of punching it in from there, which, I would like. I kind of like how college has it on 25. I think the 10 is a little too close to the end zone, and the rule is, once two teams have punched it in a row, you have a tie. So really, you have the same problem with NFL with the ties. So I wish they would move the kick back, but obviously I'm not the commissioner of the AAF, so It's not my decision, but I guess that's what I would prefer.
Yeah, I mean, from what I read the rules, it doesn't even look like you're allowed to kick field goals in overtime. So obviously the teams have to score. The thing I don't like is the game ending in a tie. So instead of going all night long like you're talking about with, like, let's say LSU and Texas A&M, we all remember that game. What was that, 80-73 or something like that? And yeah, not being able to kick field goals I do like, but the game ending in the tie I think is going to rub some people the wrong way. I mean, look, we don't like soccer in America for a reason. And hockey, when it ended in ties, obviously changed that tune real quick. So ties aren't our favorite things. We obviously don't like them in the NFL. Every time it happens, it obviously creates weird controversies in the standings. We had, what do we have, 2 or 3 ties this year? I think at least 2. I know that, yeah. So, yeah, I think fan engagement was the big key with the AAF and the rule changes. Things like the hitting, the overtime rules, no kickoffs. I mean, based on what Charlie Ebersol said, he said basically where the fan engagement was low in the NFL, we tried to kind of enhance it a little bit. And obviously for safety concerns, they eliminated the kickoff, which, again, the NFL has been toying with. I'm not sure I like it in a league like this, you know, a startup league or I don't want to degrade it, but a quote unquote minor league football. I'm okay with not having a kickoff, but you know, in the NFL, so to speak, I don't think that this play should be eliminated. What else should we know about the AAF that has a little bit of difference between the NFL, if there is any?
Well, I mean, I would definitely look at the the salaries of each player. So each player signed a 3-year, $250,000 contract, which is roughly right around, $75,000 per season, which, you look at that compared to NFL numbers, your standard practice squad NFL player makes about $450,000 per season. So, I mean, basically they're making a fourth of that, but I think you're right with I could definitely see the AAF, in the next couple of years potentially be a, like how we have minor league baseball, like we have, minor league hockey, could be in potential, minor league for the NFL. And, I think that's kind of the mission that, Charlie Ebersol is looking for. That obviously he wants to be different than the NFL, but at the same time, eventually, once the AAF starts to grow, gets more fans, gets more marketing and whatnot, that, they'll get on bigger TV networks and, eventually have a partnership with the NFL. But that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I got to imagine that the AAF was watched very closely by Roger Goodell and his team. Not necessarily for a challenge. Like, obviously after 1 week, any football league is not going to be challenging the greatness that is the NFL. But, I mean, I told Tony, he and I have a little bit of a disagreement on this. I said, if I'm the NFL, I don't look at this league and scoff at it like a little brother. I mean, I understand, like I said, you're the Goliath, it's David, but we know how that story went, and I think the best situation for the NFL is to find a partnership, and form some sort of partnership with this league. Do you agree with any part of that statement?
I mean, I think that would be, kind of the fitting part. The other thing I do like about the AAF is that they have kind of a creative focus, that they're going to put, their teams in non-NFL markets, which I feel, like the cities like Birmingham and, Memphis, I feel like is fitting because, I mean, I would like to see them expand into even, a broader scope than, obviously with Birmingham, you have Auburn, Alabama, so, I mean, you have a good pipeline of players, and you're always – and that's the other thing with, with college football and the AAF, they've partnered in a way with, certain universities, like, for example, like the Stallions. I know when I was reading their roster, they have a lot of players from BYU and University of Utah as kind of their quote-unquote pipeline, kind of like how in recruiting, with coaches, they have an area where they recruit. That's kind of the AAF's way. But I kind of like that aspect. But I would like to see them expand into even, I don't want to say remote markets, but, I mean, the fact that, like, San Diego got a team, I know they just lost their Chargers, but, I mean, I was hoping they would kind of, have a better picture of, putting the teams in certain locations that would be, more suitable for, your average show to go versus, San Diego. I mean, San Antonio, I think, is probably going to be have the best fan base as far as, because Texas loves their football. So,
yeah, and I
that's
think
kind of
I think the situation with that is with the opening teams. I believe that you're onto something in that spot. I mean, 6 of the 8 AAF franchises are located in cities that don't have teams. Atlanta and Arizona, which plays virtually next door to Phoenix, next door to the Cardinals. Both of those probably may have not been the greatest situations as far as putting teams in for the reasons that you just mentioned. But like you said, Orlando is a big metropolitan area without a professional sports franchise, or a professional sports football team. They do have professional sports there. San Diego just lost the football team. San Antonio, they've been talking about. I mean, the Raiders, entertained moving there temporarily back in the day. Salt Lake, I like that area. Like you said, and I think I actually am impressed and mostly a positive situation here with these players being, almost like a regional. A lot of the players, from Orlando or on Orlando are from the Florida area or played college ball at the Florida schools or nearby in Georgia. Same with, like you said, BYU and Utah kind of make up a little bit of the Salt Lake team, et cetera. Going forward, Trent Richardson's on the Birmingham team, things like that. I think if the success continues, I think we can see, especially if this becomes a minor league system. We have 32 teams. If we can get to 16 in the AAF, we have 32 teams in the NFL. You can get to a situation where you double the size of the AAF, and each NFL team uses one of the AAF teams, or actually 2 NFL teams would use an AAF team as kind of their farm team in a sense like that. Tony, I mean, what are you thinking about? I know that, there's a lot of information being processed right now. Sure. It's only been 1 week, which we'll recap the week here in a second and then preview week 2. But, it's a lot to digest. I mean, it's a brand new league. I mean, it's not a new sport, but it's a brand new league.
Yeah, I think it's a wait-and-see approach is probably best with this, at least probably for the regular season, if not the whole year.
In week 4. We don't need that just yet.
Absolutely. So, no, my take is, as you said, we've kind of have differing of opinions on this. To me, the extreme regionalism that is being shown, and again, the reason to grow the league or to try to expand and or get people in seats is a great move. But in regards to comparing it to a big national product like the NFL, to me it doesn't make. If I was an NFL executive, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to me to have to, you guys talk about buy out a league or, be involved. That's going to take a lot of time, money, personnel. They're going to have to hire people. I mean, that's
well, the question is,
huge expense.
Does the AAF even want to be involved with the NFL in that capacity?
Right. No, I have no idea. Again, I don't know that much about the inner workings of each management structure. But, yeah, it's to me that would be the biggest long shot out of all this. In my opinion, it would be more likely that this league sort of succeeds and they make some money for some years down the road itself. But to be involved with the NFL to me seems like an extreme long shot because there's not I don't see what the upside is. To find players. Well, they can find players any time. That's why they have all these long training camp and OTAs and things like that because it doesn't, finding the players I don't think is the difficult part. In the NFL, it's
not the finding the players. It's not the NFL's issue of finding the players, Nate. It's the players who need the exposure and the availability. I mean, obviously, college football is so much more magnified now. You can go to a small school and still be on display on most of America's TV screens. But once you go to the league and you're out of the league, I mean, your options are what? The CFL and, NFL Europe's gone, the UFL's gone, the XFL came and went, and it's coming back. Right now, as we stand, if you're not a college football player and you're not a Canadian football player, this is your exposure. This is your workout tape.
And I think, too, and the thing that the AAF's going to see, which is competition. I know, obviously, you got the XFL coming back next year, and then I know Ricky Williams is working on the Freedom Football League. So,
God.
there's unfortunately, a lot of competition. But I mean, I'm hoping the AAF can kind of be the top of that competition. Even if, because we all know obviously the XFL, is coming back for the entertainment factor. That's what Vince McMahon knows how to do. He knows how to entertain like he does with WWE. So, it's just kind of be a question as far as like how do they do it. And the other difference between the AAF and the NFL is the AAF currently is a single entity. So, the owners, the investors, it's all one, they own every team. So that's kind of how I think Vince McMahon operated the XFL as well, which obviously did not work out in his favor the first time. So, it'll be interesting to see. I think I would like to see the NFL, eventually, partner with the AAF, but if they don't, I don't think it'll be the end of the world. So it still gives guys a shot that we're on NFL training camps and whatnot to still, say I'm a professional athlete still.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're talking about. And even guys like you said, highly touted guys. I don't want to foreshadow a guy's career, but let's just say. I'm going to use the topic du jour. Let's say Kyler Murray doesn't really work out in football, doesn't want to play baseball, decides he wants to try to get back into football. This is a perfect avenue. Again, he may not be the best example. He's just the first name that came on top of my mind. He plays his 4 years. The NFL doesn't really go too well for him. The Oakland A's say, thanks but no thanks. And now Kyler Murray's kind of in this purgatory.
80,000 is still 80,000 for only a few months of work, really.
And
so,
you know what?
in
4 years, the money might be a little better.
Yeah.
And this is a chance to say, hey, look, let me hone my skills. Let me show these guys I can play, professional football. And again, maybe he gets another shot in his 8th year to come back. And I liken it to guys who went to CFL, Doug Flutie, Warren Moon. I know that's a little bit different of a tale, but I think it's essentially kind of a thing where not only are you having guys who came out of college, who were undrafted, who didn't make rosters, non-roster invitees who get cut, you also have guys who kind of float out of the league. Look, we have Trent Richardson. He floated out of the league. I would imagine he's doing this in an attempt to reestablish himself as an NFL player. I got to imagine that's the only reason that Trent Richardson's doing this.
No doubt. Yeah, it can't be the money because I know he got a pretty decent size.
Yeah, he's probably set up. Yeah. He's probably set up pretty well financially, unless he blew it. But you're right. So in that situation, Trent Richardson's got to have at least some more hunger for the NFL. Otherwise, again, I don't know why he would be doing a situation like this. And you have guys like Christian Hackenberg who are fully proving that they are probably never going to get to the NFL again. So let me
Trent too. He needs to stop fumbling the ball as well. So.
Yeah, that's true. So let's recap week 1 here just quickly before we preview week 2. Nate, what was your favorite game of the 4-game slate?
I would definitely say it was even though it was kind of a blowout, I enjoyed watching the Apollos. Just seeing Steve Spurrier get his mojo back in coaching, I thought was great. I really thought that even though, they just kind of let everything loose on them. So, I think that was definitely the best one I watched. The worst one I watched would be the Birmingham-Memphis game. If Memphis is going to play like that all season, they might be what I like to call my armpit team of the AAF. I don't know. Christian Hackenberg looked like he hadn't thrown a football in 5 years. Offensively, there was no gel. Defensively, there was no gel. But, I was looking forward to the Stallions and the Hot Shots, but the Hot Shots were, just too much to handle. But I would say my favorite game was, and watching Spurrier, get all stoked like he always does, it's pretty cool to see. I like how they kind of taking guys that were former coaches, put them in the AAF shoes. I think that's going to be really good for their brand.
Yeah, and you talked about the notoriety of the coaches. I looked down the list of coaches, and I recognize personally 6 out of the 8 coaches. I'm not familiar with Kevin Coyle or Tim Lewis, but Arizona has Rick Neuheisel. Atlanta, again, Kevin Coyle I don't recognize, but Michael Vick is the offensive coordinator. We all know that name. Mike Singletary.
He actually, not to step in, but he actually moved out of that position into an advisory role like a day before the season.
All right, well, I have bad information then. Poo-poo on me, but that's all right. But Mike Singletary, Steve Spurrier, Dennis Erickson, Mike Riley, and Mike Martz, all, if you know football, I would imagine all, if not most, are recognizable names in that spot. And like we said, there are guys, Trent Richardson being one, Christian Hackenberg being the other, for obvious reasons. They didn't, their time in the NFL didn't go as well as planned. I mean, Trent Richardson had a really good rookie year. But after that, it all kind of went downhill. But there's a lot of other guys. Zach Stacy, another blast from the past, who had a little bit of great time in the NFL. Denard Robinson, we remember him from his days at Michigan. He's on, I believe, the Atlanta Legends. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite players. A lot of people probably wouldn't know him. I actually probably only know him because he played, here on the West Coast, or not the coast, but played here in the Pacific time zone. Scooby Wright, a linebacker at Arizona. Who was just like a tackling machine. I like to think he's the Pac-12's Luke Kuechly. That's what I like to look at him as. He was just all over the field, tackle after tackle, and he's on that Arizona Hotshots team as well. So there's guys. I mean, obviously you're not going to have, Aaron Rodgers types going to be in this league, but there's going to be guys where hey, I remember that name. Hey, it didn't work out so well, or hey, maybe he's not quite an NFL player, but he can be a star in this league. And we talked about it. At some point, if the league's incredibly profitable, they could be increasing the amount of those contracts you were talking about.
I would think so. I mean, I would hope. And to throw a name at you, Nate, because I know you're a big college guy, which is what I am. When I was going through the list of players and I was watching a little bit of the video from some of these guys, that I didn't realize that John Walford is the quarterback for Arizona. And it makes a lot of sense now, being with Rick Neuheisel, who really is a fantastic offensive mind, and actually worked with, I was reading here, worked with Walford when he was in high school at like a quarterback camp. And Walford was one of the reasons why Wake Forest went from second to last in offense in the ACC to in the top 3 or 4 a couple of years ago. I mean, it was like night and day, lights out stuff.
And he beat out Trevor Knight, another name you know.
Yeah, I mean he's athletic. He's a good passer. It's actually surprising to me that he's not in the NFL. Like I was very surprised that he's actually the quarterback for this team. So, I mean to harp on both of your points here. This guy, I mean a guy like Walford, who I watched play a lot in college. I mean he is, to me, has a really strong skill set to be very successful at whatever level of football potentially.
Yeah, and I think guys like Walford. I mean, that was the biggest thing I had issues with, with us writing before the season started is, figuring out the depth charts. I mean, like when I was watching my first couple games, I'm like, okay, I said he was starting, but he's starting. And the guys like Walford and Knight, that was one of mine. The biggest one that I was surprised about was Aaron Murray not starting. I just thought, and I think it kind of showed in the game, with drawing a blank on his name. But I mean, just how do you learn this game when it's a startup? You don't, it's not like college to the pros where you see that obviously you're not going to start right away. With AAF, it's kind of putting a name in a hat and figuring out, who the best players on the team are.
Yeah, for sure. And like you talked about Aaron Murray, another regional guy. He's from Florida, but, playing for Atlanta, another guy who he played for the University of Georgia. So, you're looking at another guy who had success at the University of Georgia, comes back, plays for the Atlanta team. So he's another draw, a ticket sale. I'm not trying to use him as just an object in that. Obviously, he wants to play football, and we want to see him be successful. But yeah, it's definitely I'm drawing a blank on the name too. But you're right, the Atlanta team got whitewashed in week 1, so it didn't look like it was the right move necessarily. But
Matt Sims?
Oh yeah, Matt Sims. That was who it was. Yeah,
that's what I was saying.
So, all right, well, let's talk about the betting angle, because that's what we do here on this show, the Vegas Squares podcast. Yeah. We are here with Nate Wahl. What do we call you? Resident AAF reporter for 12 Ounce? How do you label yourself for 12 Ounce as you're writing for the AAF?
I think you just hit it on the head. I'll take the resident AAF writer with AAF Radio Now and 12 Ounce Sports.
Yeah, there also is a dedicated Alliance of American Football. I keep wanting to call it American Football Alliance. I don't know. I feel like AFA rolls a little better than AAF, but that's just me. They didn't let me in the boardroom when they were deciding. So.
No, they did not.
No, that's unfortunate. But
Yeah, we're all sad.
We obviously want to talk to Nate as much as possible about this because I for one was definitely on the bandwagon of being intrigued for the AAF. I came into it with this is going to come out wrong, but I came into it with low expectations, and those expectations were exceeded, in my opinion. And obviously, us being the degenerate bettors we are, made it, in my opinion, even that much better. And I know that you, like me, are a degenerate bettor, so it's going to be exciting for you too, Tony.
Yeah.
So let's talk week 2. We have 4 games, like we will always on the slate. The thing that kind of caught my eye, I was surprised. Again, I mean, it's not like it needed to be a guarantee, which I was under the impression that every team by week 2 would have played 1 game at home, Nate, and that's not the case. We have Salt Lake's going to be on the road for the second time, and somebody else, Atlanta, will be on the road for the second time.
Yeah, and I mean, I think with them starting off, with Birmingham starting off with 2 home games, and it's hard to set the tone. I guess with a 10-game schedule, you would expect that they kind of be home away, so they have that balance. But it's not how it started out.
Well, the reason I say that, and again, they don't let me in the boardroom when they make these decisions, is the fan bases. Salt Lake and Atlanta, I mean, they're both 0-1. Salt Lake was a little more into the game, quote unquote, than Atlanta was. But if Atlanta and Salt Lake get their doors blown in again, I mean, I don't think that's going to be a positive thing for the AAF for their home openers. The 2 fan bases are going to be like, well, these teams fucking suck. I don't want to go to these games.
Yeah, and I mean, I think especially like a team like Memphis that definitely needed a home game, with how they played last week. It's tough to look at the scenario where, obviously in the NFL, you have 3-4 games, away, and then you have your home games sometimes. But I mean, with such a shorter schedule, a 10-game schedule like the AAF has, I think, if these teams get off to 0-2 or 0-3 starts, it's going to be really tough for them to rebound once they get back home.
Yeah, but we'll see. I mean, I'm not writing these guys off necessarily. I just, based on their week 1 showings, I don't think they want to let week 2 get away from them. So that being said, let's start with that Birmingham-Salt Lake game. Salt Lake traveling to Birmingham, Alabama, to face the Iron. What I have here on my lines is Birmingham is a touchdown favorite, the total 44.5. To me, it feels like a spot, like I said, Salt Lake's got to play better football. Not that they played terrible against the Hotshots, but Birmingham seems like a very ground and pound, grinded out type of team. Their quarterback's pretty decent, makes the right throws. They have a workhorse in Trent Richardson, and their defense, at least against Memphis, played very well. So, you got Birmingham -7, 44.5. How are you handicapping this game here from at least this point before the game?
When I'm looking at this game, I mean, I feel, this is a game that's going to be, we kind of talked about it during college football season, but the number of 44.5, I feel like it's going to be close, but my best bet, I would say, was take the under on that, just based on, the Iron, are very fundamentally offensively sound, but they also have an excellent defense. And, I felt like the hot shots kind of gave the stale.
Oh yeah, Nate. I don't know if it cut you off there or whatever happened, but the quarterback situation I was looking at with Salt Lake. Does that give you any pause as well with this? It looks like Woodrum, who played last week, is questionable this week. And then we kind of don't know after that. It looked like, from what I'm reading right here, B.J. Daniels was their thought was going to be their main quarterback, and he got hurt not too long ago. He's on injured reserve.
USF guy.
Yeah, so I don't know what's going on there. I'm looking at the depth chart right now. I don't know a whole lot of these guys, but it looks like Austin Allen or Matt Lenahan would be the other two options. Have you heard anything about the injury or what's happening with the quarterback position there?
Yeah, I know. Halfway through the game last week, Woodrum was dealing with a hamstring injury, which is something that I feel like they should, sit on, because with hamstring injuries, they only can get worse and worse and worse. That's going to be the kind of test. I don't think he'll play to start. I think they're going to have to utilize. I think Linehan has been kind of like the guy in command that they are looking to use, with Woodrum being out. But I think he gives them better options. Woodrum's very much a pocket passer, which, he has. The Stallions have a good running game. They have Matt Asiata, a former Viking. They have Joe Boganon and B.J. Oliver. So they have a lot of guys that I feel, can get the ground and pound them. But, it's just, you still do need to have a quality quarterback back there, and I just don't know if they have that.
It's fair enough. It's going to be an interesting conundrum going forward in the season. All right, let's look at the next matchup on that Saturday is the Arizona Hotshots traveling to Memphis. They are a 12-point road favorite. And again, in an unknown league, we all know about home dogs, especially in the NFL. So I don't want to, just make that straight connection. But a 12-point, I think we have our first double-digit favorite in the AAF. Is this am I correct in that?
Yeah, I didn't see any in week one, so you would be correct with that.
All right, so we've got we're setting new records in degeneracy of the Alliance of American Football. Arizona is a 12-point favorite against the Express, who have yet to put up a point this season, and the total is 47.5 is what I've saw. A lot of people have Arizona as the best team in the Alliance. They certainly had no problem putting up points against the Stallions last week. Again, Mike Singletary's offense definitely did. We had the Christian Hackenberg experiment part 2. I think he was the first and only quarterback so far in Alliance of American Football history to be polled as well. So Christian Hackenberg setting all kinds of records, probably not the records he's looking to set. I'd say Memphis played pretty good defense in the second and third quarters of that game against the Iron. Ultimately, the talent of Birmingham pulled away against them. But I feel like being at home, hopefully maybe having a decent crowd, may be able to keep Memphis interesting in this double-digit spread.
Yeah, I'm kind of swaying the other side of the fence. I do think the Hotshots are. All for real. I think, when you put Memphis against Birmingham, which I always kind of thought Birmingham would be, top 3 or 4 AAF teams and, be in the playoffs. The fact that they struggled so poorly against them, even though they looked better, and like you said, second and third quarter, it startles me that, obviously they made, with Christian Hackenberg, he's been the best. But he may be another boss here in the AAF, because the Express defensively they have good players, but I just feel like the Hotshots, they have the full package. You mentioned Scooby Wright, and Wolford's a really dependable, good quarterback. They have a good running game. I really like the even though they're the away team. I like the Hotshots at 12, so that's where I'm going with.
Yeah, most of the power rankings I've been looking at here, and as I'm going through the rosters, it looks like this is a 1 versus 8 situation. Most people seem to have Memphis ranked dead last at this juncture, and Arizona to be your number 1 team.
That was Nate Wall's power rankings too, if I'm not mistaken, too.
Well, yeah, that's you're right on it, Nate. Because it's from what it looks like here, it's when you have a quarterback situation that's unknown, whether they go with Hackenberg or Mettenberger or whatever the decision is on Memphis. You don't feel confident at all, but with this great offense of Arizona that it looks like early on.
Is that Zach Mettenberger?
Yeah.
Oh, boy, yeah, I can't feel confident with either one of them.
No, I wouldn't think good at all. So.
It's a lose for sure.
Yeah.
Mike, what's Mike Singletary's about? You can't do it. You can't win with him.
Can't win with him. Don't want him. Can't have him.
Can't do it.
So yeah, it's unfortunately looks like it's going to be a tough spot even at home, and unfortunate for their first one of those, their first home game to have to face what very well may be the toughest team in the entire league. So yeah, I'm with you, Nate. It kind of does, even though it looks really weird having to lay that many points on the road. It's pretty enticing on my end as well.
I also just have one quick side note. If there are any Memphis Express fans listening, I'm trying to get my media credentials, and you all have not responded back to my request for this week's game. So if you're listening, I would like my media credentials because I'd like to attend that game with 12 Sports. Thank you.
Well, I will tell you what, when we tweet this podcast out, I will make sure to include the Memphis Express on Twitter, or maybe hopefully if they've got a media team Twitter handle, I'll try to at them as well. Get them some Nate
Some
Wahl
exposure, yeah. I mean, this is good.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm only 4.5 hours from Memphis. I talked to everybody with 12 ounce. They're all for me going down there, so just I send an email on Tuesday, I don't really want to call them, but if I have to, I have to,
Yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll here at Vegas Squares, we'll work out as best as we can. So we'll help out in any possible shape. Let's do a little. Speaking of sidebars, it was kind of reported this week that Steve Spurrier made a pitch to Tim Tebow about joining the alliance. Do you see any? I want to say merit. Merit's not the right word. Do you see any chance that Tim Tebow joins the alliance? Not necessarily this year, or just at any point. Do you think he throws a pass in the AAF?
I mean, if he's trying to figure out the baseball's not for him either, I mean, I could see him, making a change, to the AAF, because I feel like if the AAF was around, in kind of the days he was in the NFL and kind of trying to, get a starting role in the NFL, and I mean, I definitely think, at least for the, fan base and at least for the attendance standpoint, he'd be worth, taking a shot.
Holy cow, he'd fill the stadium over at UCF.
He would fill out Spectrum Stadium so quick it wouldn't even be funny. So I don't love the move, but I mean, I could see for like it's kind of a mascot type thing, Tebow, being with
Tebow the mascot.
And that's not a knock on Tebow. I like Tebow not just as much as the next guy, but I just think he'd be more of a fan pleaser.
Fair enough. That's okay. I mean, again, as much as this league is preaching, developmental football, they are still a business. And, Tim Tebow, we talked about it for many years when I lived in Florida, bring him to Jacksonville because he would fill the stadium. But the Orlando Apollos, road favorites at San Antonio, 6 points. The total's 45.5. San Antonio and the Apollos are both 1-0. Vastly different game plans in each of their games. Yeah, obviously, Orlando, we talked about just offensive juggernaut versus San Antonio had to play a little bit more of a defensive struggle. The guy I like to see in this matchup, in my opinion, is Jalen Marshall. I want to watch him play. And how do you feel about this one? With the Apollos -6, the total 45.5.
I mean, with this one, I'm kind of leaning base. I feel like Orlando has one of the most explosive offenses, in the AAF. I know they were playing, a team in Atlanta that, the head coach quit on them a month before the season. Michael Vick moved into an advisory role 2 days before the season. They had a lot of bumps and bruises in Atlanta, but I think at the same time, they're, offensively, Steve Spurrier had it all figured out, was firing in all cylinders. I do like San Antonio's defense. I think they have, against the Fleet, I do think that they definitely brought a lot of fire in their defense. So as far as the pick, I'm going to go with Apollos -6. And then with that, I'm also going to take the Apollos on the money line as well. So that's where I'm at for my gambling pick.
Now he's running chalky in week 2 here so far. All right, the final game of the AAF week 2. Like you said, Atlanta has had a few bad beats this season. Coach quit, Vic quit. They got crushed in week 1. How do they get rewarded? They got to go across the country and play San Diego in week 2. The Fleet are a 9.5-point favorite, I believe. 9.5 points. The total is 44 in this one as well. Like you said, San Diego had a rough game in Week 1. We talked about against San Antonio, but the defense that they play looks like it's pretty good, and they're going to have the home team. They're going to have the home crowd as well. How do you see this? First 1 to 20 wins?
Yeah, this is going to be a low-scoring affair. I mean, with Matt Sims at quarterback, I think they may pull Matt Sims. I think Aaron Murray may be starting this game just based on Sims' just lack of production in game 1. I mean, the Fleet. The thing is too. I mean, I sat and said Sims isn't good, but the Fleet. I don't think they really have a set guy in mind. I would say if I were to pick, I would like Philip Nelson back there. He used to play for the Gophers and the CFL, but I think he brings kind of a dual threat position in well with the Fleet. But I'm with you on it's definitely going to be an under. I think the number with where the numbers at, I'm definitely going to take the under in that one.
Right on. There you go. So we got a total. We got 3 chalks and a total. So let's review. Nate, in the Birmingham game, you liked the Iron, correct?
Yep.
All right, and then the Hot Shots versus Express, you like the double-digit favorite in that spot. You're thinking a roll spot there.
I don't know if the Hot Shots will put up more than 7 points, in my opinion. Jesus.
I was going to say, I was like, wait a second. Hold
Express. What the hell am I saying?
We got the Apollos on the money line and taking the points is Nate, and then he likes the under in the Fleet versus the Legends. So there you go, Tony. As a degenerate bettor, you couldn't get any better information, none other than Nate Wahl.
I'm excited. I'm very excited. And I think this, as you said, the Orlando-San Antonio game seems to be the best one out of the grouping of 4 this year. And San Antonio is the only one that plays indoors as well out of these 8 teams. Yeah, in the Alamo Dome, which I've actually been to, and it is a fun time. If it's packed, which they were in their first Week 1 game. This is their back-to-back home games here to start the season. That could definitely, this could be one of those actual home field advantage type of spots that a team might realistically have in this league. So it's kind of nice to see, and glad the Alamo Dome is still going strong.
Yep, that's attendance in the AAF too.
There you go.
Yeah, so we talked about a few players. We talked about Aaron Murray. We talked about a couple different guys, Jalen Marshall, et cetera, Wolford. But who are some other players, if anybody's listening to this podcast or is interested in kind of maybe, what it's in it for me with the AAF, who are some of the other players in the league that might have some recognition value to the casual AAF fan?
Yeah, I mean, another one I would say would be either I believe third, fourth round pick from the Titans, David Cobb. He was top in the Big Ten. He was, I believe, the second team all Big Ten. That's one. Another one that I can think of would be, I'm drawing a blank. Jeez. I can't. I'm drawing a blank right now. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I know that there's some other players in the league. One of the guys I liked, and I didn't know who he was until last week, was Rashad Ross of the Arizona Hotshots, number 15. I thought he looked really good, and he might be a nice slot fit for one of the NFL teams going forward next season. But you talked about, we have Trevor Knight, we have Aaron Murray, who aren't even playing at this point. Denard Robinson was another one. Everybody knows him. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he is the last cover boy for NCAA football, the video game.
Oh, I did not know that.
Before they decided that they wanted money and shut the video game down. But we talked about the coaches. A lot of the coaches are recognizable. Christian Hackenberg as well. Josh Huff used to play for Oregon, returned kicks in Philadelphia for a little bit of time. Zach Stacy, we talked about. Brad Wing, the Australian punter from LSU. Do you remember that name?
Wow, yeah.
Matt Ossie.
They also have Chris Davis. So if you guys remember the kick six, he's in the league as well with the Iron. Nice. So I'm sure Trent Richardson's pretty upset that he's playing on the
I was
same
going to say, those guys on the same team, I was thinking about that, too, because Birmingham is obviously trying to utilize just general local
Well, they got the
players.
Alabama, they got the Auburn, they have Troy,
Yeah, I mean,
LSU.
There's got to be a lot of
UAB,
contentious kind of thoughts here and there with some of these guys, I would guess. Because,
Well, I would imagine Trent's okay. Didn't he win a title? He had to have won a title at Alabama.
Probably, yeah.
So I think he's all right in the grand scheme of things.
All right, fair enough. It could just be tough. You
But
get all the
fair.
Alabama boys together.
Yeah,
I mean, that could
that's
be
fair.
tough, yeah.
Yeah, I like the concept of keeping, at least in the first year, and they're probably going to try to do this, is keeping it regional with guys, because the fans need a reason to come out. Hey, I remember Chris Davis. Hey, I remember Trent Richardson from watching him in Tuscaloosa and Auburn and, obviously his time in the league. I think it's a great situation. It gives guys a chance to showcase themselves. Again, I'm all for this league. I'm on board. I'm not rooting for it to fail, and I know you're not, Tony, but I know you're a little bit more skeptical than I am, and I just think it's a situation where I'm of the camp where I can always use more opportunities to bet, and I can always use more opportunities to watch football. So this league checks both of those boxes for me.
Yeah, no, there you go. That sums it up well. I'm rooting for the league, certainly. I think it's a long road, but certainly after the first week, I mean, anyone that is still a super negative Nancy, for whatever reason, is going to have to tone it down because it was obviously a very, very good week one for this league. So yeah, I mean, let's hope it keeps going.
And the talent level's not going to be NFL caliber, and you should not expect that going in, because if you do, you're going to be disappointed. Now, there were a few receivers, and again, I talked about, I think his name is, I'm drawing a blank on the Iron quarterback's name. It's a Hispanic last name. I want to say it's Perez. Thank you. He looked really good, but at the same time, his receivers dropped a lot of balls. That's going to happen in these leagues. There's a reason they're not in the NFL, and sometimes that gets showcased. But at the same time, I mean, like I said, I went into it with very low expectations, and those low expectations were exceeded. However, I do have one beef, Mr. Wahl, and that is with the AAF's phone app. In week one, it was dog shit.
Absolute dog shit. Yeah. I was trying to be a play caller, and it really let me down. I was trying, I gained a few points, but I was hoping for 10,000 points after week one, and I think I ended up with maybe 136. So
I couldn't even make a predictive play in any of the games.
It got better on Sunday a little bit, but I was still struggling with it. And if they want to create a virtual game experience, with it, they're going to have to improve their software and their appware and whatnot, because I saw I can't count on a hand how many ads I saw promoting the app and whatnot, and then I went to it, I'm like, well, this is just dog shit.
Well, it wasn't a good look when they were promoting the app during the game and the app was down.
That was the thing. That was the one most common negative thing I saw on social media. A lot of people were like, I love the AAF. I'd love it more if their fucking app worked. So other than that, and again, work out some bugs, but I think that Ebersol and Bill Polian have put together something that may have some legs. And I'm really rooting for it. And again, I know it's never going to be an NFL product, and I'm okay with that. It's more football. It's now we're looking at, if this is successful, we're looking at football till April, and what is that? May, June, July, August. I mean, it's to shorten the length of time between football for me is something that I'm completely okay with. The one thing, go ahead.
I think I know something you guys also might be okay with, where the championship game is. It's in Vegas.
Well, that's what my next point was going to be. Is Nate, you are more than welcome. You have lodging. If you can get yourself out here, we've all talked about it. We are going to the championship game in Vegas, so we definitely have room for one more aboard the wagon.
All right, that sounds good. I'll take you up on that.
All right, man. Well, I guess we'll see you in April there, brother. Nate, always a pleasure. We appreciate it. It was awesome. I know Tony learned a lot, and I think he's more an AAF fan now than he was 45 minutes ago.
I'll watch at least 2 of the games this weekend, so for sure.
All right, what did we say? Resident Oh man, now I already forgot. Resident
lead writer for the AAF, Nate Wahl.
Yep, and also co-host of the AAF Radio Now podcast as well, which can be found on 12 Ounce Sports Radio. When are you guys on 12 Ounce?
So now we are on at Monday at noon. So if you guys have some lunches, or if anybody has some lunches, they don't want to listen. Listen to us, me and Cody. Yeah, exactly. But you can listen to Cody and I. We'll be switching off and doing some good work on there, and looking forward to it throughout the season.
I'm in for it. I'm definitely
it's breakfast for us.
Yeah, it's breakfast. If you're on at noon Eastern,
breakfast for you guys.
That's fine.
Lunch for me.
About when I wake up. So I'm in for that as well. I would love to hear the recap on the AAF. Again, Nate Wahl, tell them where they can find you. Obviously on AAF Radio Now, but you're all over social media as well.
Yep, you can find me on Twitter, BrickWall87. You can find me on Instagram, NWall23. You can find me on Facebook, Facebook.com, NWall23. So that's kind of the main areas where you can find me, and we'll be posting lots of AAF write-ups throughout the season, as well as, the podcasts and, subtweeting the Express while I don't have my credentials yet. Things like that. That's what you'll see all season.
Fair enough, Nate. And obviously, hopefully every so often or something like that, we'll be able to get in touch with you as well, have you on the podcast. I'm definitely looking forward to that as well. So, Nate, always a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to the next 9+ weeks of the AAF and eventually getting back into our college football as well. So, Nate, we thank you again, and we will catch you very soon, all right?
All right, we'll talk to you later, guys. Have a good one.
Take it easy.
All right, man, you too. All right, that was Nate Wahl. Again, I'm going to get this wrong again. Resident Alliance of American Football writer for 12 Ounce Sports Radio. That's good enough, right? Seems legit, yeah.
There,
all right, so that's actually going to wrap it up for us. We had other things on the agenda, but I did not imagine the AAF going 57 minutes.
Totally blew it out, yeah.
So, again, we appreciate you listening. Let's thank the sponsors, 12 Ounce Sports Radio, ChaiPoker.com, Eric on the Web Productions, and Vegas Puckline Apparel. For Tony Johnson, I am Aaron. We appreciate you listening, and we will catch you on the next one.